Welcome to this Cambridge Marketing College webinar. This is time management and prioritization for apprentices, and what is not to like when it comes to the art of more effective time management and prioritizing the stuff that's really important. So in this session, we're going to look at how to balance work, learning and assessment without burning out. We're going to look at a practical system for managing competing demands, and we all have those. The aim isn't to fit more into your already hectic day, it's to make better decisions about what matters, when to do it, and how to work sustainably. So why does this matter? And particularly, why does this matter if you are on an apprenticeship? Well, apprentices are balancing at least three parallel demands: day-to-day work, off-the-job learning, and assessment and evidence building. So time management isn't necessarily a personal preference, it's a professional skill. You have to be able to do this stuff. Strong habits reduce missed deadlines, rushed evidence, and avoidable stress. So, which of these three areas do you feel currently it's hardest to stay on top of? The day-to-day work, the off-the-job learning, or the assessment and evidence building? Because for some of us, we have a natural preference to go to one of these three, and one of them probably is the one that we want to either avoid or that we don't really put on as a priority. Of course, the skill is to be able to balance and juggle all three because all three are required. So, what is time management? When I use this phrase, it doesn't mean about controlling time. It's more about controlling choices. Let's face it, we all have 24 hours in the day. So, prioritization is deciding what gets attention first, what can wait, and what should stop. It's not about increasing time. It's not about taking control of time. It's about good workload management. And this requires clarity, sequencing, some realistic planning. I'm going to talk about that word realistic in a minute, and also some recovery time. You can't keep going at 100 miles an hour every single day. So, where do you currently lose most control at the moment? Is it through planning, prioritizing, focus, or follow through? Because those are four stages that you, again, are going to need to be able to balance effectively. Now, the workload reality at the moment is tough. That is the reality. New tasks, equipment, or systems being introduced, or when your role or responsibilities change, when colleagues or others come and go. Often workload can drift over time as tasks are gradually added as well. So there's a whole bunch of stuff going on. It is hectic. I'm not going to use the B word here because everybody would say, well, I'm busy. Busy is not the answer. Being in control is. But for apprentices, this kind of workload reality is common. The role grows, the learning continues, and the evidence requirement is added on top. So it can be tough. And so accepting that reality, understanding that, okay, this is what I'm presented with. I'm not going to beat myself up over it. I'm going to stay human. I'm going to know that this is a thing, but I'm going to start to really understand what's going on. Because often what happens is that stress can feel like an uncontrollable outcome. Oh, I feel stressed. I feel over busy. I'm over pushed. I'm over everything, really. And there are six main areas that can lead to work-related stress if you don't manage these well: demands, control, support, relationships, the role itself, and change. Some of us don't like change either. And so this means that time pressure is only one part, actually, of a broader problem. This is a challenge that affects all of us, but actually, as an apprentice, unclear role expectations and lack of support can often matter as well. It's complicated, is often the phrase that we hear when it comes to trying to figure out what is going on, but also what you can do about it. But one of the things you can do about it is start with outcomes, not the actual tasks that you're set in themselves. There's something called goal setting theory, which is actually really, really effective. And it suggests that performance improves when goals are specific and meaningful. So a better approach is define the outcome, identify the essential tasks, and then ignore or delay the non-essential ones. You could say, well, Neil, that's not rocket science, pretty obvious, isn't it? But you'd be amazed how few people actually do this. If you define the outcome really clearly, if you identify the absolute essential tasks, not that you've got to complete everything. And if you're a completer finisher and you're a bit of a perfectionist, that one's a tricky one because you need to ignore or delay the non-essential tasks. You'll still get to the outcome without those. By definition, they're non-essential. So a practical prompt that you could actually say to yourself is, well, what must be finished this week? What must be finished this week? And the other question is alongside that, what would be useful but is not essential? And actually, when you put things into those two boxes, if you have them as containers to answer all of the workload or tasks that you have, suddenly things become a little bit clearer. They become less heavy, they become less dominant, and you actually start to feel like you have some control. So, reflection for you. What are your three most important outcomes for the next 7 days? This is stuff you need to write down. Don't be faced by a wall of stuff to do. Actually say, no, these are the three most important outcomes. And you have to do those. They're in the must category. I'm going to talk about a little technique that uses the word must a bit shortly. You can also use what's called the Eisenhower matrix, and this classifies tasks into four groups. Imagine doing a 2 by 2 matrix. So two boxes at the top, two boxes at the bottom. Top left is urgent and important. Next one is urgent, or sorry, important but not urgent. Then at the bottom, you've got urgent but less important. And then bottom right is neither urgent nor important. And best practice is to protect time for quadrant two. It's the one that is important and urgent. That's really what we're doing here. And if you can then work to that one by planning, revision, portfolio writing, relationship building, these are going to be things probably in that important and urgent. You're going to start to be able to then focus on the things that really are key to be doing. There's other techniques and principles as well that you can kind of build into this. Stephen Covey's principle of disciplined priority is actually really quite a simple but very, very effective lesson, really, for us all. Is effective people do not just react well, they invest in prevention, preparation, and progress. In other words, if you are an apprentice, you're going to be updating your evidence weekly. You're going to be preparing for reviews. You're going to be reading ahead. You're going to be asking for support early. This is preventive action. This is actually getting sort of things done in advance. Now, if you're the kind of person who leaves things to the 11th hour because, well, you're busy, aren't you? You've got other stuff on, or, it's kind of, oh, I'll make time for it. This one could be a bit of a game changer because what it does is it enables you to be proactive rather than reactive. It enables you to kind of get to the answer before actually you need it. So you can just put that one to the side, knowing that it's done. That can be a really interesting one. But as you're doing this, you'll realize actually what you're doing is you're starting to do planning. You're not starting to be reactive, you're starting to take control. Now, one of the challenges, and for the project managers listening to this, you will know that this is true. People, humans, routinely underestimate how long work will take. And go on, you kind of know that's true, don't you? Go on, admit it. Apprentices often plan as if everything will go smoothly. But of course, we know things won't. Things will arrive on our desk, or phone calls will come through, or that email that you weren't expecting suddenly comes in and shakes everything up. So a better rule is estimate the time to complete something, add a buffer, and account for the interruptions. Actually factor those in because they are inevitable. Unless you are going to hide yourself away in a cave in the top of a mountain and switch off all the tech, you will get unfamiliar things coming through and you will get unexpected stuff happening. And a practical habit here is to double the time. If you're going to be doing unfamiliar tasks, add 25% buffer for busy weeks. Factor in downtime. because we all know that we do this. I certainly say yes to way too much. I certainly overcommit and then have to then struggle my way through actually completing things and often overrun because of that very need to just really accommodate everything. That is not a helpful thing. If I was to put in these kinds of buffers and actually plan for the unexpected, then I'd actually probably have a much better kind of flow, if you like, of task completion. So, a little reflection here. Which type of task, if there is a particular style or type of task, do you consistently underestimate? Because you might, if you think about this and reflect on it, you might see there's a pattern. I certainly do. And also, when you're doing planning, break work into smaller units. If you see a great big project or a great big campaign or a set of tasks that have been given to you and you think, oh my word, look at that, it's a wall of stuff. Where am I going to start? Then breaking it into smaller units is just common sense, isn't it? Large tasks create anxiety and avoidance. When somebody says, "Oh, I'm procrastinating today," and I know I've done this. In fact, I've done this week already. It's because I was looking at something and just seeing its entirety, seeing the big version of it. Whereas actually, as soon as I used a simple breakdown, a project, a milestone, a task, a next action, and actually then focused on those next actions rather than the big project itself, suddenly I started to make progress. And that progress builds momentum. It increases energy. It gets you fired up and it gets you on to the next thing you need to do. So, for example, build a campaign report becomes gather the data, choose the metrics, write the summary, add the visuals, proofread, submit. Because build a campaign report sounds like, oh my Lord, that's going to be quite a few hours work. But if you just gather some data, look at that data and choose some metrics, write a brief summary, add some visuals to go with it, proofread it to check it, and submit it. How does that sound? Even the tone of voice as I was saying those steps felt more relaxed. It felt more achievable. So break your big stuff down into smaller, bite-sized chunks. And that will encourage you to time block because time blocking beats hopeful planning. Useful blocks for apprentices would be, and I'm sure you've probably already tried this or practiced this, but focused work block, admin block, study block, portfolio and evidence block, and catch up block. Best practice is to schedule important work before the week fills up. Get that into the calendar. Put off the job learning into the diary, not just on a to-do list, because you and I know it won't happen unless you schedule it. And mark these times. If you need the time to be protected, mark it as out of office, mark it as a meeting, block it out. And do not accept, just simply do not accept when somebody, and I'm going to include your line manager here, says, "Can you just do this for me?" Do not say yes. Have a negotiation and say, "I can do that for you, but this is going to need to move. Where can we negotiate that I can move this because I have to complete this as a priority?" And so you get into a proper conversation rather than what I would do, he says in brackets, admitting the truth, is just say yes and then try and squeeze it in. That is not the way to do this. Time management and prioritization means you need to block time and protect that time. If you do, your life and your time is going to be protected. And others, including your line manager and also colleagues who kind of want and demand your time, they will start to respect the value of your time. If you don't respect it, nobody else will. Harsh human workplace fact. And it really is true. If you don't respect your time and protect it, nobody else will. If you give them an opportunity to interrupt you, and it's your time, it's nobody else's life, even your boss, it's your time. So if you protect it, you block it out, it's investment of time, it's valued time. And you can negotiate and move stuff. I'm not saying you're going to say no to everybody, but you might be able to say, it's a no right now, but it could be a little bit later in the day if that's okay. And if it isn't okay, where are we going to move this? Can we negotiate where I'm going to move this particular task? Which is it this thing is replacing? Those negotiations are proper professional use of time. And those will enable you to plan weekly, then daily, because a strong system has got two levels. Okay, so you've got your weekly review, you've got your deadlines, your meetings, your study time, the evidence work, likely pressure points. It's kind of the reality of the week ahead. And you've blocked it out and you've put that time in as sacred time, out of office, in a meeting, you've protected it. And then the daily plan then goes your top three priorities, the realistic timing that we were just talking about, and one contingency task. Things that just give you that little bit of flexibility, things that you might be able to add in if you can get those top three priorities done in advance. And this will reduce your cognitive load. In other words, the amount of thinking you're going to have to do and the decision fatigue. Oh, do I do this next or do I do that next? You don't need to worry about it. It's in your plan, it's in your daily plan, and the daily plan feeds the weekly plan. You've got it sorted. This will free up time in itself. And think about it, if you just reflect on this now, when will you do your weekly review and how long will you protect for it? Is this the kind of thing you'll do last thing on a Friday if you work Monday to Friday? Do it last thing on a Friday before you finish, because then you've got the Monday morning, you're good to go straight from Monday morning. Or do you want to leave it over the weekend, just let kind of things brew and sort of work their way through? And then on a Monday morning, first thing, you then set up the weekly plan. It's your plan. I'm not going to tell you when to do it, but you have to find time to do it. So whenever it fits for you is great, but make the time and use a prioritization model for any kind of requests that come in. I've already said about these interruptions. Your boss comes in and says, well, can you just do this? That word just, it never means just. It means, can you do this? But I'm not really kind of brave enough to sort of tell you you've got to prioritize it. And so then it's down to you. When new work arrives, ask, is this urgent? And I mean properly urgent, not just because somebody is shouting. And is it important? And again, not just important because somebody tells you it is. Is it properly important? And who's asking? And I'm not saying that, more senior people get priority, but in some businesses, that's the culture. But is that the right way of prioritizing things? And what if slips? What slips if I say yes? What is going to kind of have to move or shift because I can't make time. And if somebody says, "Oh, well, can you do this at the same time as?" Well, no, actually, the concept of multitasking is just it's a misnomer. It's just a theory. It doesn't actually happen. Humans cannot multitask. No matter what you hear people say, is, "Oh, I can multitask. Yeah, I can do this." No, actually, in any one moment of time, they're doing one thing. They can't actually technically do two things at a time. Now, of course, we've got AI to come in and help us do multitasking with an AI agent. It can be doing one thing whilst we're doing something else. But for you and your time, this is the key thing to be thinking about. And so we've got some models that will help us with this prioritization, and it helps you negotiate rather than simply absorb more work. So when I say to you, and you say, Neil, you're just making this sound too easy, this whole saying no thing. I'm not saying no, never. I'm saying no, not now. That's a big difference. That's not being, oh, I'm folding my arms and saying, no, not doing that. That's not what it's saying. It's saying, well, no, I can't actually deal with that now. I can't prioritize that now because this is what I'm working on. And it opens up, again, this value of your time, the importance of your schedule. You're a human being, much like everybody else who's bothering you and giving you extra stuff. So protect it by saying, let's negotiate. And you are able to negotiate these things by using some of these models, which I'm going to talk to you about in just a moment. And limit work in progress. Really try and sort of, strip stuff down. A lot of the time, what we find ourselves doing is actually work that kind of complicates stuff. A lot of the time, Kanban thinking, which is a manufacturing process that has been around for many decades, but it's really useful thinking at this point because too many active tasks slow things down. And what you can do is you can really sort of start to simplify stuff that enables you to just really focus on the to-do stuff right here right now. A simple board that you can actually put here is I'm going to list all the stuff that I've got going on right now. Some of it's in the to-do, some of it's in the doing, some of it's in the done, and some of it's waiting for feedback. And if I can keep juggling these things, and of course these are only the essential tasks, we're going to put off the non-essential tasks, remember, we've already agreed that we're going to do that, then what I'm doing is I'm limiting the doing column probably to just two or three active items. So I'm not necessarily multitasking, but I'm giving them little blocks of time to move maybe two or three things forward at the same time. And so I'm going between these two or three things because I've only got two or three things to work on. The rest of it is to do. The rest of it I'm going to do it at some point, but it's not right here, right now. So I'm kind of giving this a sort of a reality check, but I'm focusing in on what's really important. So I'm almost taking the concept of minimalism, which is kind of, sort of bringing things down to their kind of core kind of simplicity, if you like, rather than saying, yeah, I've got all this stuff on at the moment. Look how busy I am, because that's really, really not helpful. So think at the moment, how many tasks are you trying to do at once right now? Kind of, think about all the different projects and stuff you've got on. If you were to use Kanban, the to-do stuff, but the stuff that you're actually doing and only have two or three of those at any one time. And then once those things are done, they go into in the done box. A tool like Trello is a very good one here. It's a card system that's based around Kanban, allows you to move things as you complete them into another category. And as you move those physically in your little card system or move them off of your to-do list, if you want to just keep a note system here, it just frees up space in your mind as much as it does in your calendar. And that's really going to help. So limiting the work in progress enables you to build this energy flow, this momentum that I'm talking about. And manage the interruptions. Don't endure them. Interruptions are part of work. So, I'm talking about sort of saying no and this, that, and the other, but they are just practical things that are going to happen. Unmanaged interruptions will destroy your focus, but interruptions are going to be there inevitably. So, practical techniques and things that you can think of is to batch email and team checks. If you're looking at Teams all the time, you've got to always switch on just in case somebody needs me, or I've got my email running there just so I can just dip in and out of it. You are not managing your time because those interruptions are going to take over your life. You're working to other people's agenda, not your own. So you can use status indicators if you want to. Yeah, you can. I can see right here, right now, there's three new emails that have just popped into my inbox. Can I see those? No, because I'm talking to you, but I can see they're there. So I know at the back of my mind, they're not interrupting me. I'm not enduring them, but I'm just noting that they're there. So I can add those to my to-do list to come back to you later. And finishing the current action before switching wherever possible is the key. Don't leave stones unturned. Don't leave stuff unfinished. Close stuff. Move it from the doing into the done box. That is absolutely key. And think about just for a moment, what interrupts your focus most often? What boundary could you set to reduce it? And again, this out of office, in a meeting kind of mindset is key. Switching those things off when you're doing the other stuff is a way clearly of getting some really strong prioritization in. And I'm not talking about blocking out full days here. I'm talking about focus with short, protected sessions. You don't need endless concentration. You need repeatable focus. You can use as a concept if you're not aware of it. It's called the Pomodoro effect. And the Pomodoro model talks about short, focused blocks of attention. It does generally talk about sort of anything between 15 and 45-minute focused blocks. Depends obviously on the task. Some sort of simple single task might be a lot quicker than that. Some stuff might take a little bit longer. But if you can make sure that you've got a single task with a clear finish point and you do it within a certain time frame, then that is done. And it is done, and you can move on to the next thing. The Pomodoro effect is really, really key because what it says is that when I get to the end of that time frame, if I haven't finished the task, I'm stopping anyway. Now you might think, well, hold on there, you just said finish the task. Ah, yes, but the focus is going to be gone at the end of that point in time. And, if you've got a very short attention span, then that could be a much shorter period of time. For some people, it's a lot longer because they are able to focus just naturally. It's a preference they have. We're not judging here. We're saying everyone's different. Everyone's got a period of focus that they can maintain. And probably it's shorter than you would naturally be doing. And for difficult tasks, you can start with maybe just a 10-minute block. And when I say about the end of the task, what do? You get up and you stretch your legs. You go and do a little walk around the office or around your house if you're working from home. And then you sit down and you start again, another focused block. This is a great way of building habits. What task could you find that would become easier if you only asked yourself to focus on it for 10 minutes? 10 focused minutes before you stopped, got up, wandered around, came back and sat down. Your energy levels, rather than just, literally plodding on and plowing through stuff, are going to be so much higher. The Pomodoro effect generates energy and focus. It doesn't detract from that energy and focus. Another thing you can do as well is, and this works a lot for many people when they understand this, is they can reverse engineer or work backwards from deadlines. Backward planning helps you prevent last minute pressure. So if you think about it, for each deadline, if you ask the question, what is the finish date or the finish time? Then you can review the date and think about what do I need before that. You can then do the preparation. What do I need to prepare before that review? And then you can ask the question, when should I start it? So this works well for campaign work, for assignments, for portfolio submission, or if you have to prepare a presentation. Working backwards from an end point enables you to kind of work in reverse. That means actually, I don't need to start this thing until kind of Tuesday next week, or actually, I've got this thing which everyone's saying is really urgent, but actually, when I work backwards from the end goal of achieving it, it's only going to take me 20 minutes. So actually, I can slot that into that little free slot there on my day next Wednesday. It doesn't then load you, it enables you to take control. So maybe that's one worth playing with. That could be quite an interesting one. And of course, when we're talking about this, we're not just talking about work here, are we? We're talking about, if we're talking through an apprentice's lifestyle, we're talking about assessment evidence as well, because you are going to be collecting evidence for your portfolio. For the rest of us, we're collecting evidence for our LinkedIn profiles, or our CVs to keep those up to date. So it does apply to everyone, actually. And we do need to treat this as routine work. Many apprentices, and actually anybody who isn't studying or isn't looking for a job, probably leaves this indefinitely. We leave the evidence creation and collection until it's too late. A better habit is to keep and capture little and often. Write it up what the context of that great example of the work that you've done, or that amazing piece of feedback that you got from that colleague or that agency or that customer. Capture it, write it up when the context is fresh. Link everyday work to your learning outcomes weekly. Try and figure out, where did I add the most value? Can I evidence it? Can I capture a piece of evidence, maybe even anecdotal, that somebody said, "Oh, good work, Neil. That was really good. Yeah, thanks for doing that. That was helpful." Or, "Oh, you added some real value there." Turn evidence into maintenance rather than crisis work. This is something we should all be doing, and I'm looking in the mirror as I say this. We should all be collecting good examples of the stuff that we do on a day-to-day basis, on an ongoing basis. So treat it as part of your daily task set, part of routine work, not something you leave to the end or when you actually need it, because by that point, it's too late. So, building a simple evidence routine could look something like saving one useful file or screenshot, noting what you did, noting why you did it, noting the outcome, the value it brought to the business, and noting what you learned about yourself or the situation. 10 minutes a week doing that is far easier than trying to do this and trying to rebuild it from memory months and months later. So it applies to your LinkedIn profile, to your CV, or here in Apprentice Land, to your evidence portfolio. And think about maybe the smallest little weekly piece of evidence routine that you could actually realistically do right now. And think of today. If you were to do this maybe at the end of play today, just for the last 5, 10 minutes of the day today, you think, okay, what have I achieved today? Can I log that? What was the most significant thing of value that I gave to that person or to my boss or to the organization or to a customer? What did I learn from this? How did that make me feel? And what would I do differently next time? It's a great habit. It's a really strong habit of building a good set of routines here that are going to serve you later when you need them. And ask for support as well earlier. I really find this in terms of managing time and prioritization. If you need more flexible hours, if you need more rest breaks, if you need a different set of responsibilities or help prioritizing workload, if you need training or mentoring, and let's face it, all of us at every level of experience, and in every industry, we all need more of this, don't we? Really? Wouldn't that be helpful? So why don't we ask for this from ourselves and from the others around us more regularly and more, urgently and more openly? Good apprentices don't wait until they're overwhelmed before asking for help. There's clear evidence that says if you ask, you will get, and you'll get it more readily, and it will support you to enable you to move forward in whatever goals you have and whatever kind of position you're working in. It just works. I mean, practical support requests might be help to reprioritize, some clearer deadlines, protected study time, a quick weekly check-in with colleagues, a mentor, or your line manager. All of this applies to apprentices and non-apprentices, to be fair. And if you've got customers or clients that you directly serve, think about what you might be able to do to help them understand the value that you're bringing and vice versa. So think about what support would make the biggest difference to you right now in your workload, to managing your time and your prioritization. What's the first thing that jumps to mind if you were to ask for support? What do you really need? What would be the game changer if you got it today? Because that could be and probably should be the biggest focus. And well-being, which is really what we're talking about here, is also part of performance. Well-being should be integrated into the culture, leadership, and day-to-day people management in every organization. I mean, a healthy workplace supports both people and the organization's performance. And of course, sustainable performance matters more than short bursts of overwork, even when we feel, oh, look at those deadlines. This has got to be sustainable. So, signs your system needs attention on this is that you're constantly feeling like you're catching up. You missed evidence in the kind of good campaigns or projects that you've done. You're feeling that sleep is suffering, your inability to switch off in the evenings and at weekends, and actually your low quality of work output when you're under pressure. These are the early signs that tell you your workload is becoming unsustainable. Any of these, even if you're just sensing that they're there, but you're not truly feeling them right now, are signs that now is the time to pay attention. This is a human thing. Time management is so human. Prioritization is so human. And you can own this. Ultimately, you're the one accountable for this. So your well-being, even in a very well supported organization, is down to you to take responsibility, to ask for help, ask for support, and help with identifying what it truly is, what it really is that's getting in the way of your peak performance and feeling. And as part of that, this word recovery, I said I was going to include recovery. It isn't wasted time. A lot of people think, oh, downtime, recovery time, I need to plow on through because I've got all these deadlines and things to achieve. You will not achieve these things on a sustainable basis. I've seen this play out. I've felt this. I've had this myself as well. You have to be prioritizing recovery time. It is not wasted time. Good workload management, good time management, good prioritization includes breaks during the day, realistic stop times, transition time after intense periods of work, and proper recovery after deadlines. Rest breaks is a really, really supportive adjustment if you're feeling stressed or overworked. Actually, including these as part of your daily routine is everything. Because if everything is urgent all the time, your system and you are broken. It's an honest truth. Even organizations who have this real kind of mentality, this kind of whole idea that, yeah, we're strong, we work hard and play hard. Well, that's kind of okay, but to a point. Urgency, deadlines cannot be there at all times. The system or the operations or the business is broken if it, excuse me, if that's how it feels. So it's really important that recovery, downtime, rest doesn't have to be huge, long periods of time, but breaking stuff up, pacing, recovery is absolutely vital. And so let's just think about how you can sort of track this stuff and maybe creating some kind of workload dashboard that maybe allows you to track just enough to stay in control. Because that's really what we're probably talking about here in a kind of full day. So maybe a suggested dashboard that you could create, maybe here to kind of start this journey of really becoming aware of your time management and prioritization could be, what are my top priorities, my top three priorities this week? What are my key deadlines? What are my study hours that I'm planning and have booked in? When and where and how am I going to capture the evidence that I need to show the value I'm bringing? What support do I need? That's probably both professionally and personally. And what one risk is most likely to impact on all of the above? Because you're not necessarily saying that this is absolutely right and correct, but it gives you something concrete to review with a line manager, a mentor, or a coach. It gives you something tangible to talk around. So you're less likely to be bothered with the, oh, can you just do this? Because the people around you, your colleagues and your manager knows what you've got on. And often that responsibility of sharing what you've got on is not the person you work for. It's actually yours, sharing back because they have obviously got their own priorities too. So they probably haven't actually got time, even though they might sound and look like they've got time to worry about yours. It's your responsibility to own it. And once you've then put that little dashboard into play, maybe then it's about building a 30-day improvement plan, starting to use and play with some of the processes and techniques that we've talked about here. And how could that play out? Well, maybe week one is a complete complete a workload reset. Maybe you map all your deadlines and choose one prioritization model. Have a little play and explore with that. Maybe week two is adding calendar blocks, creating your evidence routine or limiting work in progress. Maybe those are things that are going to help you to then start to create those habits. Maybe in week three, you review interruptions and boundaries. You start to challenge back with the evidence. You start to negotiate. You ask for one useful support adjustment as well, maybe, as you start to build confidence that actually, I've got this, actually, I'm in control. And maybe in week four, you review what worked and review one low value habit that actually, wasn't quite as strong as the other. But also refine your weekly planning system because this is going to be a process of understanding and uncovering your preferences, the tools that work for you that you can then build into habits that become subconscious and you don't even think about them. They become part of you. That's really where we're trying to get this. That can be super, super valuable over time. But being patient is key. But decide what you're going to put in maybe to that little 30-day improvement plan. Because strong time management isn't about being busy for longer. This is not about overproduction, stretching yourself even further. It's about making very realistic choices. It's about protecting the most important stuff, including you. And it's about building habits that you can sustain. So patience comes into this, reflection comes into this, understanding and changing and adapting comes into this. So I'm going to leave you with some thoughts here. Have you identified your main workload pressures? If not, that's a good start. Have you chosen a prioritization method? Anything from Pomodoro to some of the prioritization tools that I talked about you? Have you planned a weekly routine? If you haven't yet, maybe that's a good one to go back and think about. Have you built an evidence habit already that you can then fine tune? Or is actually factoring in, capturing, gathering, and reflecting on evidence something you need to schedule in? And have you decided what support to ask for professionally and personally? Because if you can do all of those things, you will find yourself in a far better place to be able to manage your time, value your time, and get those around you to value your time more effectively. And then to enable the prioritization of stuff that is going to give you better outcomes, outcomes for your organization, but also outcomes for you.